Tick tock, tick tock. Oh, there we are. We're live on Facebook, I'm hoping. So, what are you doing there?
We must be live on Facebook.
I think we are. Hopefully.
Yep.
Anyway, there it is. So, welcome everybody. And tonight, Scott will potentially be with us around 7 o'clock. He's in Sedona, doing what he does best, and that's being a love coach and just a loving being. And I forget what the is it Portals to Ascension in Sedona right now?
No, I think that it is the evolutionary leaders.
That's it, evolutionary leaders. So he's there doing that. And so please put in the chat where you're from and what you appreciate about today. How about that? That sounds yeah.
Do you want to send out the bumper to the world?
Oh yes, let's do the bumper to the world. Thank you very much. Pull up to the bumper, baby. That's Grace Jones. Yep.
And it's so nice to meet you. Oh.
Yay. And here we go.
You're doing great.
What if I were to suggest that you play a key role in the awakening world? And that you are watching this because you have heard the call. We can start right now by opening our hearts and minds. Welcome to the awakening world.
Except
it is us. I know. Welcome and welcome everybody to tonight's edition of The Awakening World. We are the Global Peace Tribe. And we have a wonderful topic for you tonight, and just welcoming everybody who's watching on Facebook, and of course our Global Peace Tribe channel, and Alan Steinfeld's channel, Global Peace Tribe channel, no, his whatever it is channel. What else is there? Oh, the Sign Network. Yes, we've got about 135 Facebook pages and groups on the Sign Network. So thank you, John and Samarena. And we actually heard from them earlier. They're still in Hawaii, basking on a beach. And it's like, really, how awesome for you? Because we're in coldy situations. So what's up tonight, Trish?
Oh, you all know me and how my millennialisms are here. And I think that I'm really excited about tonight's show because I get to bring back a conversation that we had almost 2 years ago. And before we start, I want to kind of give you some precursor, right? So we're talking about the different colors of love and the different styles of love tonight, and what really love means. And I invite you to type in the chat what love means to you and what love feels like, the different types of love and really how that lives in your world. There's a couple of things we're going to talk about that I really wanted to sort of define before we get into the call, because some of these are pretty juicy topics, right? And I think that the one definition that I want to bring in specifically is the definition of queer, because I know that a lot of people might not understand what this is. A lot of people in my age group and a lot of younger people really are still working on what this means. And I'm curious, by maybe raise my hands or even like typing in the chat box, what does queer mean to you? Have you heard this word? So I'm going to read a definition online from Planned Parenthood that says queer is a word that describes a sexual and gender identity other than straight or cisgender. So it'd be lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. People also might identify with the word queer. And I also wanted to, because there's a specific word in there, cisgender, that I wanted to also kind of give you an understanding of. Cis means same, right? So the same gender, which would mean the gender that I was assigned at birth. Now, what that means is that when we're born, we come out with a certain type of genitalia. I'm going to get really just technical for a hot second, so bear with me. It's going to get more fun, I swear. So we come out with a certain type of genitalia. Now, in larger cities, they will take a child's blood to see if that, if they're, whether they have an X and a Y or an OY and a Y, you know, like they'll take the, oh gosh, what is this word? Does anyone have it for me?
Chromosome.
Yeah.
Chromosome. Yay, Suzanne.
So, they'll take a look at the chromosomes, but in a lot of other smaller towns, if you have, and I'm going to say this, ambiguous genitalia, that means that, you know, like the little fish scale, you have to throw it back if they have a measuring system that if your clitoris or your penis is a certain size, then they will actually operate if it doesn't fit into the conforming norm. I bet you didn't know that. I didn't know. Whoa, huh? So now as we're getting into, and it's like I want to say it's like 0.2% of the population is actually born with ambiguous genitalia. Do you know, like out of the population of the world, I don't know what that is because I'm not good at math, but that it's a pretty large number. So I think that's one of the reasons why there's a lot of people who are really exploring what feels right to their body. And this is what I want to bring in about queerness, is that it really does look like whatever your authentic, true expression of self looks like. That's what the queer people really want, is for you, for me, just to be happy and free, doing as you wish. You don't have to conform to a gender norm if you don't want to. And you get to really express yourself. So if you're a man and you like to wear makeup, so be it.
Yay.
Fabulous to wear on anybody. Because and there's another social piece. And Omashar, I wanted to ask you some questions here. A socialization piece around how we are created as. And I'm going to go to a couple questions in a minute.
Yeah, carry on.
That this, when we're born, there's a whole social thing happening. And I think that a lot of the global peace tribers here really understand that we're on the outside of what society tells us to do, right? Like we're spiritual people, really pushing for a larger mentality, a connection of all people and of all beings, of all animals, right? That we are all one. And there's ways that in like school systems or in the language of the laws, or the way that people sort of identify people, it's already sort of gendered, right? So if you look a certain way, then you're gendered a certain way. You're supposed to wear pink, or you're supposed to do the dishes, or you're supposed to, you know where I'm going here?
Yes.
Yeah.
And just the for me the conditioning that was given upon me as a British person, an anal retentive Brit, I used to call myself, with a totally homophobic family, a completely homophobic society that I was growing up in. In fact, queer bashing was one of the things to do if you were in a certain sect of the people in England. And when I was really super young, like under 6, 5, I knew of the all-inclusivity of everybody, and how we're all sovereign beings and we should all just express as we are. However, I know over the next maybe 5, 6 years, I had all of those things shut down to me. And so I couldn't even share my love of everybody. The fact that I would love a man, I've been hetero all my life. However, it hasn't stopped me looking at males and thinking, wow, you are so beautiful. Holy smoke. If only. And almost, it's because as your mind clears from all of the judgments, you realize that there's just beauty everywhere, and it's in everyone, and it all needs to be allowed to rise to the surface and be sovereign and expressed. And so it's taken me years and years to peel those layers off and travel the world and see so many people of so many persuasions up face to face, to realize that they are me, they are the human, they are the heart in you is the heart in me. And so therefore, why have I got all this effluvia in my mind, which is pitting us against each other? And
Yeah.
So it sucks. And there was something else I was going to say. It'll come back, I'm sure. Yeah.
I really appreciate you being vulnerable there as well, and sharing sort of your programming and the attraction to maybe a same-sex person. And I think that if we're not taught that some people are bad and wrong, or we're not allowed to do those things, I think that we do not see the skin of the person.
Absolutely. And of course, I was brought up in an atheist family. However, I became a queer boy at 9, and in a church. And so everything there was, man and woman, holy this, holy that, and holy smoke, you got it so wrong. It's just love. It's all just love. And I remember the other thing I was going to bring up was when I was 15, my father used to work in a department store. He was some manager dude. And they just had the latest pair of purple velvet pants out. And I brought them home. I was just sporting my purple velvet pants, was my expression. And my mum said, you take those straight back. And it's like, what? So anyway, there's, the final shutdown before I left home. The final shutdown.
Can you send me a picture of those pants? Because I might bring them to the retreat next week.
You should. They were awesome. I would have loved them. I wore them. I had no shame or judgment about them until my mother gave it me. Sorry, Mum, but that's true.
Does anyone else have that experience where you were shamed for something that felt really good for you as a young being, where you wanted to express and you were just like, no, that's bad and wrong in some way? Whether it was society or, and I'm just sharing these things with you as a way to understand sort of these younger people coming up. Like, if you want to understand these young people, I speak Gen Z as much as I speak Boomer. Scott's helping me. And, and feel free to ask me any questions here. So we're going to get into a little bit of, we'll get into a little bit of this conversation from 2021, but first, let's the music and getting into the mood.
We are. That was my private messaging to Trish there. What does this say? Gil, play a song before the movie. So on Facebook and YouTube, we're having a little direct messaging here, and I direct messaged my privateness to everybody. So that's about, this show's going to be about being completely open and transparent. And so here we are. And let's do that. Let's do this, actually. So maybe you can spotlight it if anybody's shaking their booty.
Okay.
do without you in my life. It would seem so unreal. I'm glad it's not true. What could I ever feel if you left me alone? I'm so happy you're here, that you came through. I am one love with you. You're part of my life. Don't think that I'm crazy, 'cause I feel so alive in this new situation. I am never alone. You gave me your heart, and now I call it my home. Show me a better way to get on with my life. I wasn't always this real until you. I know of the constant change that we need for our souls. There is always a way for us to get through. I am one love with you. You're part of my life. Don't think that I'm crazy, 'cause I feel so alive in this new situation. I am never alone. You gave me your heart, and now I call it my home. One love with you. You're part of my life. Don't think that I'm crazy, 'cause I feel so alive in this new situation. I am never alone. You gave me your heart, and now I call it my home. Never know how to finish those songs. When everyone's dancing, you don't want to carry it on forever. However, there it is. Thank you. Love you so much. And the love is palpable between us in this global peace tribe. And of course, we ultimately know that the global peace tribe is all of the 8 billion people on the planet now. 8 billion. Whoa. There's quite a few.
8. I just tipped the scale recently.
Just recently, somewhere around there. I know that some of the online things I've been listening to in the last year have said, 7 billion people, but I think it's 7.9 or somewhere up there.
Oh, no. I mean, last month it tipped over.
Last month it did, excuse me, yes.
I mean, ding, I got the message. It was amazing.
Woo! Yeah, congratulations, Mother Earth.
So many people to love.
Yes.
And,
Are there questions to answer? And should we start the video?
Yeah, let's talk. Let's read a couple of these. So Lori says, as long as it doesn't hurt anyone, I'm happy about more love in the world, no matter who does it or what they call themselves. Agreed. Roger or Bonnie says, I don't use the terminology queer, and I don't really like the term gay. I come from a generation where queer meant strange and gay meant happy and carefree. Neither terms describes a gender in my view. I have many homosexual friends and some very close and dear to me like family. I don't, in my mind, distinguish people by gender. They are who they are, and I don't even look upon anyone as different from anyone else, and that we're all individuals. Love this. And one of the things that I want to say about that is there's this term, it's called reappropriation. And it's a really cool word, so that we take, like, generations of people will take a slur, like we see this in racism, and we see this in the LGBTQIA plus communities, that we'll take a slur and we'll make it, we'll own that. We'll be like, you don't get to use that word anymore, and we'll empower ourselves in that word. Does this make sense? You've probably seen this happen a few billion times in your lifetime. And then I like this one too. Susan says, I like the way Gen Z is using words to describe self-expression, words which bring attention to judgment and cis preference. Oh my gosh, exactly. And they're making up words. Like, they're literally changing the lexicon in the entire world. It is, they're so fascinating. I love them so much. I love
that is how new language is created, right there. Yes.
All right. Do you want to load up that video?
Yeah, I'll load up the video. You're going to have a hoot of this one, because it really is a blast from the past. And I think that upon it, Trish is camping in Siberia or something like that. So here we go. Without further ado, let me know, Trish, that all is well, please.
We're live on Facebook. Hello, everybody. I'm Love Coach Scott Katamas. And it is October 8th, 2021. And this is, well, it's not really straight talk this evening. This is queer, poly, beautiful, weird is lovely, everything you can imagine that's not straight talk. I'm the straight person who will be meeting all the weird, wacky, wild, poly, kinky friends. So welcome. We're going to have a really fun time, a really, really fun time. And I know.
Yes.
So the reason why we don't call it straight talk anymore is because I was really, really like adamant that there's people who don't identify as straight here.
I never even thought about that until this moment. How about that?
I was like, Scott, can we please change it? I am not straight. And it's a very boomer term. He was like, well, what do you want to call it? So my partner at the time and I bantered back and forth about what the name of the new show was, and we called it The Awakening World. So, okay, now you can go back. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. That's perfect. We shall do this many times.
My partner Trish is kind of pulling it together. So while she does that, I'm going to introduce my friend. You've seen her before.
I'm right here.
Are you happening? Are you like good? There you are.
I'm happening. I'm in real and I am coming.
We so
Mount
love
St.
Trish,
Helens.
but you're also
Yeah,
it's not good. But try again. I'm going to put the spotlight on my wonderful kinky poly partner Trish.
Hi. How are you? Can you hear me?
That seems better. That's better.
Oh, good. So I'm coming to you from Mount St. Helens from the bottom, just right now.
How has your trip been?
Amazing. It's been really lovely. And it's cold. It's 46 degrees.
Wow.
Good thing I have a really furry, cuddly, delightful little boyfriend named Mr. Winston Wolf.
And
thank God.
Winston's now turning into a popsicle.
Barely. Yesterday it was 36 degrees and we moved from the tent to the car because it was so cold. Wow. In Mount Rainier. We were like, okay, it's cold now. Back to California we come.
Well, it's great to have you. Glad you made it. And I do want to introduce Camila. Camila is an amazing coach. She's somebody that has come through the Love Coach Academy program. Camila, I'm going to let you introduce your friends, Blake and Brianna, and tell us a little bit about Flourish Coaching.
Sure. Thanks for having us, Scott. Hello, everyone on Facebook and all other channels where we are coming at you live. I'm really honored to be here this evening, and I have with me two of my dearest friends, Blake and Brianna. There they are. This is Blake Zeeler and Brianna Cribire, and we are coaches in a program called Flourish. And Flourish was birthed from Brianna's world of Sacred Sexuality Rising, and you can go to sacredsexualityrising.com as well as Sacred Sexuality Rising on Facebook. And ultimately, all of us are coaches in the sexuality space, and all of us identify in our own ways as poly, kinky, and queer. And we're building a coaching program called Flourish for folks who identify as any of those three or all of those three. And we're going to be talking more about that tonight.
Awesome.
Thanks,
So
Camila.
Blake and Brianna, tell us a little bit about yourselves.
So I am the founder of Sacred Sexuality Rising. And in a lot of ways, poly, kinky, queer has been part of my identity for a very long time. I think from probably ages 7 or 8, without having those kinds of labels. What I understand now about myself to be true is that has been, I've felt like a weirdo most of my life. And I have specifically felt like a weirdo in the realms of relationships and sexuality. Come to find out that I wasn't alone. What I have really, really loved is that I even just defining these terms, poly, kinky, queer, I found that so many people from the definitions that I work with, which are totally working definitions and constantly changing and evolving as I constantly change and evolve, that a lot of people can relate to this, particularly kinky. You know, things that people like, all of us are weirdos in our own ways. We all have things that once we're really in touch with our truth and owning our desires, we're all a little kinky. That's a little bit about me.
Straight talk.
And Blake, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Scott. It's really great to be here. I'm having so much fun already. Yeah, what can I say? I have felt like a weirdo most of my life too. And it has been various forms of outcasting and finding myself as just not belonging in all sorts of ways. And it took a long time to really get into the nuts and bolts of like what I really wanted and how that was showing up in my life. And as I got further into adulthood, it was like, like these identities that I grew up with and this conditioning that I grew up with don't fit. And so one by one, I started discarding them and discarding former versions of myself, you know, and really like outgrowing, shedding skins. And I didn't really know from the time I was 7 or 8 years old, I had a much more latent progression of emerging well into adulthood and building up my life according to what I was told I should do and being utterly unhappy with it. And then piece by piece, discovering my polyness, my queerness, my kinkiness. And as I said yes to each of those things, I had to shed another skin and kind of move into a new space of self-acceptance and community acceptance and ultimately aligning with the people and the values that were most authentic for me. Yeah. And along the way, personal development became part of my path. It became a big part of my world. And so stepping into coaching was the most natural unfolding of a reinvention of my career and of my whole life. And really starting out with coaching poly folks is where coaching began for me. So 5 years of doing that has brought me deeply in touch with the journey from the common paradigm that we all grew up in into the expression of one's truth, regardless of the acceptability of it. Yeah. So that's a lot of where I've worked with people is to really just own what they want and build their lives accordingly, build designer relationships from their desires. And here we are.
I think I just want to name that we have these 3 Dalmatians behind us. This is a real background. This is not a virtual background. We did not pick a virtual background, but there are 3 Dalmatians that are featured in the movie Cruella. And that movie is all about being a total weirdo.
That's perfect.
This was not planned or on purpose. We just happened to be an Airbnb that is very dog themed.
I love that.
We're at Grandma's house and Grandma's very, very dark.
So I want to kind of acknowledge the incredible progression. And let's talk about the word queer. I'm 65. And when I was a kid, like about the worst thing you could call somebody was a queer. And so there's a long period where that was a really horrible thing to call somebody. Then there was like this evolution where my gay friends embraced being queer. And actually I was in 1988, I wrote a movie called Men in Love. That was a feature film, and we had $1 million budget. And it was my life for 3 years. And it was just at the start of the AIDS epidemic. It was before they even called it AIDS. They were calling it the gay cancer. And I had a lot of friends that were dying. And so I wrote a movie, and we got money, and it was 3 years of my life. And once we made it, I wrote it and produced it and co-directed it. I traveled with the movie because the distribution company thought, okay, let's make the pitch. Why did a straight man make a gay movie? And so I've actually, although I am straight, I've been around the gay scene a long time. And it's beautiful how the word queer has been embraced. And then you guys are really embracing it in a really loving, passionate way. So that's all a setup just to ask about your own personal journeys. And this is to all four of you. I'd love to hear your personal journey of being afraid of being queer, or whatever other word you want to use, and then embracing it. And what were the steps that helped you to make that transition?
Camila, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. I'll kick us off with a conversation I just had last week in Greece. Someone who was in our yoga retreat group was from Germany, and he spoke great English, and he was asking me, is it okay to use the word gay? Is that considered, an inappropriate sort of mean term? Scott, you want to switch the camera?
It's on you.
Oh, there we go. Okay. And so it was really fun for him to be tapping into awareness of which words in English are polite or impolite to use. And so I was letting him know that it's perfectly fine to use the word gay. I think it's sort of the most maybe proper, homosexual, gay, there's sort of proper terms. And I let him know that I prefer the word queer, and that a lot of my peers prefer the word queer, but that he should really ask each person what term works for them and doesn't work for them, because there's plenty of people that will not appreciate the word queer. So as you were saying, Scott, it's really, in many ways, I think there's an evolution over time, which words are more in and which words are out. And queer is a word I've been using for the last at least 10 years. So I've been using it quite a while. But to get to your question, it was pretty obvious I was queer from a very, very young age. By the time I was 3 or 4 and I could start talking, I could start picking out which clothes I wanted to wear and didn't want to wear. And that was when I stopped wearing skirts and dresses. And, a lot of queer female-bodied people that are masculine of center, like myself, have the same story, where at some age in childhood, they did not want to wear, a skirt or a dress or girls' clothes anymore. And unfortunately, a lot of people have the story that their mother, father, whomever was raising them, made them wear certain clothing to look a certain way. And I was really blessed to have parents that were on the hippie spectrum and on the, children should be able to choose what they want and express themselves how they want spectrum. So I was able to wear only boys' clothes from about age 4 until I hit puberty early on. And so I would say the beginning time that it was a little challenging for me was around puberty. Because my body started changing, and then I couldn't swim in boys' swimming shorts anymore because I wore just swimming trunks for years. And then when I started going through puberty, I would wear t-shirts with my swimming trunks. And then 6th grade was when a lot of things changed for me gender-wise. I'd already gotten my cycle a couple of years earlier, so I'd already been in puberty for a couple of years. But for whatever reason, at my school, it was 6th grade where things socially started changing a lot, and the boys would then be friends with boys and the girls would be friends with girls. And up until then, all my friends were boys. And so 6th grade is when I started wearing girl swimsuits, started shaving my legs, started wearing bras, and switched from guy friends to girlfriends, not romantic girlfriends, just friends that were females. So I would say that was the beginning of challenging for me, and not before that, mostly because I had a family that was accepting and me expressing myself how I wanted to, which was basically as a little boy.
So how was that for you in those years where all of a sudden you're having to be with, girls, and having to, do all those things. Did you kind of resent it? Was it a fun adventure? Was it really
It was
unpleasant?
hard. My saving grace was I have an older sister, and so she went through all of that before me. So I was able to take her hand-me-down bras, and I didn't have to have the conversation with my mom in the same way that my older sister had the conversations with my mom. So that was something I was really great for, was sort of sliding on her coattails with femininity things. But I remember it being very challenging to feel like it was no longer socially acceptable for me to present the way I was presenting. And that went up until, well, I was pretty much still a tomboy all through school. And I had a brief period of time where I married a man at age 17, and I was married in a heterosexual monogamous religious marriage from age 17 to 21. So that was a time where I expressed myself more femininely and missed a lot my sexuality of being with women. And
so how are you all feeling about this conversation that we're having? You feeling good about it?
Yes, it's I'm going to jump in, and please chat, and if anyone wants to put their hand up, please do. It's bringing up for me as we go along stuff, and it's funny. There's a part of me that doesn't want to face it, so it's blanked out again. So come back to me. Yeah.
Sure. I love it when it brings up your stuff.
I know, me too. I'm really grateful. I did not used to know that this was a good thing. I used to be very fearful of it, but this is the awakening. This is the awakening. And thank bloody God, goddess. Wonderful. Excuse me, I don't want to call you bloody. That's just a Britishism. It's not a swear word.
The goddess is bloody, yes.
And I've completely forgotten what it was. It was so clear, but it's obviously a sore point in me.
And let's talk a little bit about that too. So have you ever been on the edge of an awakening piece and it keeps slipping away? It's sort of your brain and your body's way of trying to stay in the habituation of it, the habitual term, like, because that's
yes. It's come back to me, and I know, but it was that I've always been attracted to tomboy women. Is my favorite kind of woman, because it all fits in with the societal heterosexual norm. You can have a boy, but it can be in a woman's form. It's bizarre, and I've just noticed it across my life. I just love masculine women. Not necessarily butch, but definitely somewhere that is a little more balanced there. But so I'll stop there because I can see something happening.
Oh no, I'm just appreciating that, because
it's a trip. Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah.
Well, again, when we start, so one of the things that I was doing maybe a few years ago is that I would sort of like mentally strip the skin off of people and just kind of meet them as like just a skinless, muscly being, and being like, hey, who are you? And then I just would take it down to even the skeletal system, just so that I'm meeting person to person, soul to soul. And what it has occurred to me, I'm one of those people, like maybe those practices that I've naturally come to really got me to this point where age doesn't really matter. Physical body styles don't matter. Skin tone doesn't matter. That it really is about how a person shows up in their world, and if they're in integrity, if they're being honest, and if they know who they are. I mean, if they're doing their work, if they like you, Amishar, are like, ooh, the awakening, and I'm leaning in. But if they're running away, I'm like, whoa, we can't play. And it's really person to person, right?
Exactly. Yes.
I wanted to read a couple of these comments that came in while the video was playing. So you didn't mention that hermaphrodites are born with organs of both sexes, and usually a decision is made that at the time to assign them to one sex or the other. Exactly. Surgery is done to fix them so that they are only left with the external organs of the sex that was assigned to them. This is why we say assigned female at birth. or assigned male at birth. And so if you ever see the terms AFAB, assigned female at birth, or AMAB, assigned male at birth, that's what that means, is that that's what we were assigned. And some of us who have, I'm a vag having estrogen running body. I don't really identify as female, but I don't really identify as male. And I just sort of fit in the center. I just don't want to like play I don't want to have to be a certain way or wear a certain thing. I just want to do whatever I want to do. I mean, without hurting anyone, of course, but I'm just going to like, if I'm going to want to wear a mustache one day, you've all seen me in a mustache, maybe once or twice, or maybe I want to wear boys underwear. Like who cares? Actually, they're really comfortable. Have you ever worn those? I mean, you guys do, but wow. And then some days I want to just wear a dress. It just is. So I don't have to. It's called non-conforming, right? Thank you for that really clear understanding.
Yes.
And Reverend Jeffrey says, words matter in this new world, and we can all share that has power is love-olution. Help, love-olution help. Let's see if we can make it into the dictionary. Yeah, let's do it. Oh, this is the one I really wanted to read. So Lori writes, it seems to be my experience nowadays that there's more often I hear straight bashing, and they're actually starting to feel like the minority. Any thoughts on that? Yes. So I'm writing a paper right now about how some forms of social justice can also take the far end of the spectrum. So they're fighting against some injustice, but they also are perpetuating the same systems of harm because they're angry, because they're frustrated, because they want to be seen and heard, right? And I think that it can get really easy to poke at something that's harmful or hurtful, right? Like if you're like, no, Trish, you've got to wear a dress and you've got to wear a bra and you've got to shave your legs. And I'll be like, oh, I don't want to do any of those things literally at all. And then you're impressing your belief system on me so much to a point that I feel like I have to conform. I might be resentful and crabby, and I might bite back. And in those situations, I try to remember, as someone who has also been really on the edge of being canceled, because I'm looking at those things like, hey, like I'm on neither side. I'm just sort of like, let's figure out a way to communicate and move it all forward. That when we get to this point where there's two sides that are frustrated and not feeling like they're heard, again, bringing it back to those Love Coach Academy places, bringing it back to the nonviolent communication places, is asking questions. Why does that person feel like that? What is really alive for them? What are their values that are working? And really leaning into those places, and not participating in more harm, right? So, yeah. Why, thank you. I would have made a good hippie. I'm actually on my post-hippie journey. I was grew up in Montana. I was a tomboy, right? Because I was slightly masculinized as a child, but also supposed to be very feminine. And then come to California, and it was a whole other thing. My mom said, oh, you had to move to California to become a girl. And I was like, well, actually, not untrue. And now I'm all flying on the way back. Yeah, let's ask.
Let's carry on, shall we? Or
let's answer the question.
Oh, excuse me. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to actually speak to that question about straight people feeling bashed.
Yeah.
I've been part of the queer justice world for 30 years now, and I experience myself as gender creative, and so and I experience people's energies much more than I experience their physical attributes. And so speaking to people feeling straight bashed, a lot of times for me, if I raise issues of straight privilege, people entrenched in it feel threatened, defensive, and or bashed, because after all, I'm supposed to be nicely quiet and disappear or be erased and not actually raise the fact that I exist as a gender creative being. So yes, there may be people who are really angry about the whole culture being erased, and that may come out in forceful terms. It's different than trying to erase the person that you're angry with or the culture that you're angry with.
Right.
Exactly. Thank you for bringing that up. And exactly. So this just happens so much. The dehumanization of another person, which is literally like my largest pet peeve in the world. It's hard not to be angry when your who you are is being erased on either side, right? And there is this thing, like, I think that we all want to be accepted, right? I think that we all want to be in belonging. And our strategies for belonging have gotten really distorted throughout the hundreds and hundreds of years that human beings have been here. And that we've learned how to control other people or fight them or beat them or shut them down or, find ways for safety through these certain pathways and avenues. And there's some of us, I think, here that are really trying to find a more peaceful, a more loving, and a more accepting way. And that it's true if I share just like Sylvia, like if I share like, hey, I'm queer, or if I'm gender nonconforming, being a vegetarian or a vegan, like it's you pick the identity that people will often push against that, and then they'll get angry because it pushes up against their reality. My parents were really, really angry that I went vegan once, and I was like, why does it matter? It's not your life, And I think that the piece of like our brains are wired to have some sort of again habitual. We go back to the same sort of processes. We'll stay in that, and it's safe there. Like the brain says it's safe, so we kind of go back to that reality. And I think that's what we're touching up against a lot of the time. So if you can, try not to bash anyone. Just get more queer or curious.
There it is.
So you wanna send us into that video?
Okay, let's do that. Let's find it. Where's it gone? Hang on a minute. Oh, where is it gone again?
As soon as I divorced when I was 21, I went straight to the Castro in San Francisco and got myself a proper adult girlfriend. And never looked back.
Blake didn't know this story yet, Camila.
I see your faces. I'm like, oh, you don't know this
He's
yet.
like,
So good. So good.
Oh, beautiful.
Can I share my story?
Please.
Yes.
I don't exactly consider myself queer. I don't really like the term, and I don't feel like I want to label myself in that way. And it's just, I mean, there's some like shyness around that for me. I'm really big in the BDSM scene, and I go to kinky summer camps and all these things. And I just, because I look the way that I look, I wasn't queer enough for the queer kids. And so they me out, and I was like, oh no. Okay. I consider myself an estrogen running badge haver. This is really what it like boils down to.
Say that again slowly.
An estrogen running badge haver. I woke up in a body that runs estrogen, and now I have menstruation and, you know, an innie. So yeah, yeah, exactly. Because I know that gender is a social construct along with a lot of other things, and I don't need to participate in kind of a categorization of myself. It's just too limiting. What I love, so I grew up in Montana being a total tomboy. In fact, my mom made a joke when I was in California, maybe like 2008, 9. She was like, "Oh my God, you turned into a femme here." And I started wearing dresses and makeup and like the whole like, you know, thing. And that's when I became a dom, you know, is really enjoying my like the power of the femininity, right? And so being able to play in those realms and being in the kink scene really has helped me explore my masculine, you know. I remember when I was little, oh, this is super, how graphic can I be, Scott?
Go for it.
Okay, I remember being teased by my sister. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm saying this online. Is that I would pull my labia really, really tight, and I would see if I could pee standing up and shoot out like a dude. And I was like, you know what? Like, I really, even as a child, I really didn't participate because I was like, you know, I can be whatever I want. I'm an only child doing my thing, and I still feel that sense of, I feel that sense. And so when I started exploring Tantra, realizing the unification of the masculine and feminine, it's really just receptive and penetrative energies. And I was like, oh, I can just be. And so now I cross dress and I, you know, participate in my masculine, and I, you know, I'm a really cute boy, just so you all know. I look really cute.
Maybe you'll show us a picture of Christoph later on.
Oh, well, Christopher Lee, shamanic spiritual fuckboy, is an expression of self to try to develop compassion for a particular man that I've dated, like a particular set of men that I've dated since, what do you call it, Scott? The California hot tub tantra?
Right.
Is that what it is? Yeah. So that I sort of fell into that realm, and that Christopher Lee is is an embodiment of that person, to find love and compassion for them. But my actual masculine, my male, is Jonathan Lewis. So that's all a little bit of my experience. I just don't participate because I'm gender non-conforming. I just don't care.
Trish, we should do a show and drag together. My drag king is Mustang. We could do a joint show.
Oh, well, my drag character, his name is Rod Hammer. He's a Russian comedian, and he's into buns, bail buns. So I have this, like, I have a whole set of, I got stuff going on.
Got many options.
Wow.
I can so relate to this character. I'm like, wow, I have this 7-minute man actually that like really I get into.
For only 7 minutes though.
She's very boundaried. It's very clear.
7 minutes. I've made Blake be the timer.
Yeah. And hold down your victim.
Yeah.
Well, we already have a couple of people that want to watch what you're describing. So
I'm sure.
And I'm going to put the spotlight on Blake and Brianna because it's a little bit of a head scratcher, because you're advertising yourselves as being kinky and queer, and we
look so
like
fucking wholesome.
Perfect heterosexual, you know, millennial couple. So
millennial, thank you.
Cute.
We're not that much. No.
So what gives here? I mean,
appearances can be deceiving.
Especially if we're hanging out with each other, right? So like if I'm out to dinner with Camila, people might have a different assumption, but you know, Blake and I can kind of pass.
Yeah.
For whatever.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that listening to Trish's share about not identifying with the word queer, but then she went on to say all these things that are true for her. All those things that are true for her are true for me, and I apply the word queer to all of them. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of interesting. Like queer for me was sort of like this beautiful like catch-all of like, well, I'm not straight and I'm not monogamous, and I have a very active feminine, and she is very, very expressed, and I'm just not straight hetero. So that was redundant cis white male. You know what I mean? Just like whatever that generic brand was, queer was sort of everything but that. And in the discovery of how subtle queer can be for me and for others, I came to look at couples that appear like us with a more of a questioning gaze of like, well, okay, sure, they could pass for this cookie cutter version of romance, or this vision of what we think of when we think of regular people in love. But if they spend 2 minutes talking to us, they'll quickly get the download that's not the case.
Blake, can you, for our audience, just because it does happen to be sort of an older spiritual group, can you please define passing?
Passing,
because it's
sure.
very specific.
I mean, I can make up a definition. I hope it resonates.
Oh, here. I actually have one. So passing is generally a gender, is a trans conversation around people who can emanate and be seen as what they're projecting or what they're embodying. So a trans man who looks and is taken into society as that is considered passing. Does that make sense? So that's just like so everyone can get on the same page, just in case people were questioning what passing is.
And I think it might even predate that into racial conversations, like just to be a little bit more accurate, with that and like where that comes from, and then has been adopted widely for people that pass as anything that would be more widely accepted as normal.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Thanks, Trish.
Yeah. So a cis man who doesn't speak with a lisp, who just walks into a conversation, isn't necessarily going to be seen as somebody who also likes to have sex with men. Straight passing. Which is something that has been both a privilege for me and a form of erasure. And I think that there's a lot of that going on, kind of to Scott's original observation, that like the appearance that the two of us have doesn't necessarily turn heads or make people question what they're seeing. So we're passing for normal, which cuts both ways.
And I think that another piece that's interesting about that is that we just happen to be together tonight for this video, right. But we would have any other time. We don't live together, right? We would have any other time.
You could very well be at Camila's house right now.
I could very well be at Camila's house.
She's mine tonight.
I love it.
And I was living with my partner, who's a woman, for the last 3.5 years, and so most of my exposure of my community, and I do a lot of emotional intelligence, transformational training type of environment, and it was edgier for us to be together all the time, and I think to come out to a lot of our communities, and particularly because a lot of my community knew me as having partners that were men. Because no one was talking to me about my sex life when I'm leading a large 150 people in a room. They're not asking me about the intimate details of my life, and frankly, I didn't share a lot of that because it wasn't about me. I wasn't putting myself out as a brand. It wasn't about me. I'm really there to make a difference in the lives of other people. But if we show up on video together, there's going to be some assumptions from time to time, especially if we just gaze at each other.
Yeah, right.
Actually, here's
on camera so they know.
Here's another question for all of you, all four of you.
You want to put my panties back on?
Yeah.
Put them in his mouth or your mouth.
They're right there.
This is a wild show. It's getting fun.
Just getting
surprise.
Okay, now serious question. Seriously, because it's straight talk, or not quite clear talk.
Right.
How do you all manage other people's discomfort? And especially, let's just say, other people's discomfort that you care about. I mean, obviously there are people you don't care about at all. But how do you manage when people you do care about, their opinion, their relationship is important to you, and they're fucking uncomfortable with whatever queer thing you're doing? How do you deal with that?
I'm going to give a quick example that my mom, who is a feminist and very liberal and was the high priestess of a coven when I was growing up and had gay and bisexual friends, like I always knew these things to be true in the world. When I, at 35 years old, started living with my female partner, she had a meltdown. She was in this conversation that I was in a phase. I just laughed at her face and I was like, I've been loving women since I was 7. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, and I was losing it and thought it was hilarious, but she was actually pretty deeply affected. So I really, I think that this question is deep.
Yeah, it is an important question. It depends on who the person is in your life. If it's your mother or your sibling or your oldest friend, it can be incredibly scary to sit with their feelings. Even just sitting with the question of like, are they going to accept me? Will they be okay with this? Before you share something is terrifying. So much so that it keeps a lot of people in the closet about the truth of their life. The other answer that I have is that I don't spend time with those people anymore. There are people in my life who I was friends with long ago who got uncomfortable about me and around me when I started coming out as queer and poly and just owning who I am. And they fell away, honestly. I lost a lot of friends and gained a lot of new ones who are so much more aligned that it's hard to say that I lost, really. But when it comes to people in your life who you can't just let go of so easily, it's a practice of acceptance, of accepting yourself for where you are and being honest about it, and accepting that they may not understand and they may have a lifetime of conditioning that tells them that you're wrong, bad, and going to hell, or whatever else the consequences are. And that's hard to hold.
I've had a lot more pushback around being poly and being out about being poly than I have about being queer. And I don't talk as much about kinky, although now I do a lot more freely. And I take a lot of joy in talking about polyamory at this point in my life. And it's also been 15 years. And so when I started to lose friends and have people create misunderstandings and stories mostly behind my back 15 years ago, and then for the following 5 to 10 years, I didn't know what to say and I didn't know what to do. And I was in a lot of victim mindset around that. Like, I really felt so sad and confused. And the last 5 years, I think this is a big part of why I love coaching around this now, is because I see how common this is.
Yeah.
And
I want to answer the question that came in.
Michelle, can you stop the video?
Oh yeah.
There we go.
Doreen asks, in this age of so many angles and perspectives on sex, gender, and sexuality, with such a broad range from total illegality, oh my gosh, and persecution to wide spectrums of social stigma, family shame, cultural bashing, and on the other side, too much wokeness, pleasure activists, sexual misfits, and cancellations all over the place. What has helped you the most in flowing with your changing sexuality, enjoying your gender fluidity, and feeling unashamed in feeling pleasure and sharing the joy of it all with others? Good question. Therapy. Like, having a really good therapist is really, really, really helpful. But also reminding myself that where I feel shame, and I'm specifically talking about the shame of the social programming, right? There's certain things that we know, like that love is love. We know that love is love. That there's certain things outside of that, not the shame of me hurting someone, right? Or not being able to show up the way that I said I was going to show up, or something like that. But the really, like, the shame of the social construct of the identity of, is to really remember that piece is like, this is a man-made creation, and that I will still always be, defiltering that piece around, whether I'm expressing my in my relationship polyamorously, that there's shame around that because people don't understand it, because they think it's some certain way that frightens them. And to get really, again, finding compassion for their perspective and understanding, to invite them in. dancing. Dancing is a really big one for me. But I dance in a very Gestalt dance embodiment practice to remember that the body is truth. Like my body's feelings are true. And to really speak to people who get me. Like, I'm not going to share all of the things that I have in my life with people who don't meet me there. Like, who can't meet me there, who will shame me. I'm not going to talk to my, I don't know, like my dad about I'm starting to talk to him a little bit more. Here, I'll just tell you this. I posted something a while ago about the expression of Jonathan Lewis, my inner man. And my sister screenshotted it and sent it to my dad. And my dad calls me and he was like, "Oh my God, are you transitioning?" Because he thinks that transitioning is a mental health issue. And I was like, whoa, chill out, man. Like, you'd probably have known long before I was going to transition, because that's a whole other thing. But this is the gender expression that I'm expressing right now in this form. And he didn't quite get it. So I don't share with him all of the expressiveness. But if I want to be like, "Hey, Scott, let me tell you," or "Hey, Omashar, let me tell you," these people are safe for me in my fullness, in my full expression, right? That could be polyamorously, or that could be God knows what. I mean, give me a few months and I'm sure I'll have something else for you.
I so appreciate your honesty, and it's been really fun watching the previous show. And I want to respond to a couple of things that have gone on in the chat box. First off, I really want to acknowledge Lori talking about being persecuted for polyamory, and that does seem to be, people are now more accepting of gay and queer and LGBTQ, all those letters. But polyamory is still perceived, especially if it's a woman, you're perceived as a slut. If you're a dude and you have lots of lovers, you're cool. If you're a woman and you have lots of lovers, there can be slut shaming that goes on. And I really want to acknowledge how horrible that is. Also, in response to you, Susan, what Mormons or people that have multiple wives, that's not polyamory, that's polygamy. They're
Yes.
very different things. Polygamy is multiple wives. Polyamory is multiple loves. It literally means poly means many. Amor is love, so many loves.
And polyandry is many husbands.
Polyandry, that no doubt something that you may experience someday.
One could only hope, Scott. I'm just having a hard time figuring out one, or how to keep a boyfriend. Anybody have any advice?
That'd be good. There's a whole show right there. So yeah, I'd love to just ask you, Trish, if you want to share anything for Lori about. And by the way, I liked Lori's definition of polyamory, because Lynn and Leaf asked, "What is polyamory?" And again, it's one of those things that means different things to different people, but it usually implies multiple lovers. And I really like what Lori wrote. A polyamorous relationship can be between any two or more people in any way they see fit and agree on and are happy in. Beautiful. And I'll add that polyamory works when everybody in the constellation cares about everybody else.
Yes.
It doesn't work when that's not the case. Also, as my friend Kamala Devi, who I coach and who's a polyamorous teacher, points out, move at the pace of the person with the shortest legs. Meaning, if you're using an analogy to it being a hike or a marathon, move at the pace of the person who needs to go the slowest, not the person who's ready to go racing ahead and go fast. So, Trish, what are some of your thoughts
About polyamory?
And also Lori's thing about, being shamed for being polyamorous.
Again, I think that there's a level of there's kind of a newness in the conversation. I know that polyamorous has been around for a very, very, very long time, and multiple like we'll call it extended family. But the way that it has expanded in the last 25 years has been incredibly profound, right? With LGBTQIA plus, that those movements have been pushed really hard in a lot of different waves, right? Different waves of feminism and different waves, and polyamory is now one of the things that's coming out, and it's really, they're difficult, to say the least, in the legal system to understand it, right? Anything that's outside of the system norm is considered bad and wrong, right? And just as a thought that I've been thinking a lot about, and a lot of people discuss it with me, and we discuss, is that capitalism specifically is founded on the nature of the nuclear family, because the nuclear family, the two-person family, is a way of property ownership, right? Marriage is an institution of property ownership and legacy leaving, and so that shifts when there's house of 16 polyamorous millennials, it's shifting the dynamic in the capitalistic system. Anyway, so I think that's there. And then there's the places of people not understanding or being ashamed of their own sexuality, that they can't understand that there is an expression, a fullness of the expression of sexuality, or the fullness of expression of love, because we've been force-fed this idea that love is between just two people, that you can't love other people. So it's literally pushing up against reality, their reality, in such a specific way that it destabilizes their identity. That's how I see it. I just put in the chat something called openlove.org, and Open is a really cool organization that is a lobbyist organization. For lack of better terms, I'm sure they wouldn't express themselves like this, but it's Organization for Polyamory and Ethical Non-Monogamy, and they're doing their best to change the laws that are so that polyamorous families can also receive the same benefits that monogamous married couples have. So changing the laws, changing the language, because as we all know, as we start to look at, we'll call minority experiences, whether you're a minority skin type or a minority relationship type, or we're starting to look at these systems and recognize that it's the language of the laws, even though it doesn't exactly say it's racist or sexist or whatever, that there is language there that's really oppressive, and that we get to change the laws. We get to change the language to allow for more love. And I freaking hate that people are degraded and oppressed and browbeaten for just loving. And thank you for still choosing to love.
Beautiful. Dorina writes back, thank you for sharing that link. There's a link that Trish put in. And thank you, Trish. I just joined it, and the newsletter Open, Organization for Polyamory and Ethical Non-Monogamy, is a nonprofit dedicated to fostering all that we're talking about: acceptance and building political power, supporting non-monogamous communities and leaders. So it's beautiful. Lori writes, to me, it's about not being so possessive and jealous. It's about knowing you don't own someone, and that just because we can love more than one person, it doesn't hurt or diminish us in any way. And Reverend Jeffrey writes, interestingly enough, the hippie community had several couples try 4 marriages and not one survived. It's hard to overcome ego at this stage of consciousness. Yeah, I want to address that because I've coached about 100 couples and families on polyamory. And and I've been coaching it for 12 years. So I've got a fair amount of experience of watching how it works and doesn't work. And there's a term called compersion, which is learning to take pleasure in watching people you love having their own experience. An easy example of compersion is a mother who's at the playground watching her child play, or when I'm watching my dog at the dog park play with other dogs. I'm not playing with them, but I'm taking pleasure in watching that happen. So in polyamory, there's a desire often to practice compersion. Wow, I'm in love with Trish, but she's with somebody else, and she's telling me all about how wonderful it is. Can I manage my jealousy and just take pleasure in it? What I've learned is that we can spiritually and intellectually want to do that and even be capable of doing it, but we're also in animal bodies, as Trish holds her cat. We're in animal bodies, and sometimes our animal bodies are not ready for that. And so I just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, it takes a lot of work to deconstruct the program. You've been taught by the time you're 7 years old how to relate and what the nature of relationship looks like. To actually deconstruct that belief system in your brain takes consistent work. I started my polyamory journey 9 years ago, and it wasn't until 2 years ago where I started to feel, I mean, this is constant work and being triggered a lot and going to classes and reading books and having a polyamorous therapist and having a coach. And I mean, I'm like literally doing the work, and it wasn't until 2 years ago that I started to be like, oh, there is a way I feel safer in my body now. There's also a book that just came out called Polysecure that's a really epic read and is really helpful for polyamorous families. But even now, after 9 years, I've chosen that my nervous system prefers monogamy, but outside of the love is control. Outside of that, like, how do you have monogamy without having this toxic monogamy piece or this control piece, while bringing in the foundations of polyamory in that sense? That's where I'm exploring.
Beautiful. All right. Omashar is suggesting that we continue with the video. So go ahead, Maestro.
My perspective is compassion and education at this point. And I can, and not everyone can. I certainly couldn't, especially for those first 5 years.
That's beautiful. Compassion and education. And that's a really beautiful short answer to a complex question. Camila, Trish, I'd love to hear what you have to say about that question.
Yeah. I recently had an experience with my family that, I mean, you were around for it a little bit. So my nibbling, which is my sister's child, is non-binary, and they asked me to use non-binary pronouns. And I posted a picture, the picture of Jonathan Lewis, and as like a way of sharing, like, hey, you can be weird and queer and cool and whatever. You can do whatever you want, and I'll still be here and to love you. And being really promoting that. And
I've got the picture right here. So there's the picture, or one of the pictures.
Yes.
Meow.
Which character is this? Which of your male personas is this?
Well, this is actually so I went to a sex party, a kinky poly sex party, as Christopher Lee, because that's where you participate in social dynamics. And I really needed to play this character out. Anyway, Christopher Lee is really lovely. Actually, no, he's not. Jonathan Lewis is way better. He's a nicer guy. So when I called my dad, he had this really interesting reaction. He believes that nonconformity is a mental illness. And I was really, really pissed. I was really, really upset. And I sat with that for a long time. It's just being like, okay, this person was born in the 60s and lives in a different life. And luckily we live in a more authentic world. Like the world that we do live in right now is developing and cultivating authenticity as a form of inner truth. And so I sat with my father's reaction. He wanted me to post a clarification about my post. And I sat and I thought about it and I was like, I'm actually not going to do that. What I am going to do is leave it as is. And I'm not going to rub it in his face, because that would be cruel. Like if I know that I'm being uncomfortable with him, like I don't need to participate in some aspects of self with those people. In fact, that's called discernment, how we move through. And so I sat with deep compassion, was just like, okay, this person is deeply uncomfortable there, regardless of whatever stories I can make up about their own understanding of identity and whatever. And I just sat there in compassion, like, okay, I love this person. I love them from where they're at. And I can show up the way I can without abandoning myself with that person. But I'm also going to hold my truth and my values in a very specific way. And so I really resonate with Brianna's share about, yeah, it's about compassion. That's coming back to understanding someone else's perspective and being able to hold that. Again, I don't like share, hey, you know, poly kinky queer stuff with my parents. It's not necessary for their reality. When I'm sitting on the couch eating popcorn at their house, I'm certainly not needing to express that aspect of myself.
Mila, I'm going to want to hear from you next, but I just want to read a couple comments from our readers,
Sure.
or our people in the Zoom room. Matthew talked about how in the military, some of his closest friends were still hiding, and it was surprising to learn that they, you know, had been that they were gay because it wasn't safe. Beautiful comment from Lisa. She writes, being and speaking authentic truth is so powerful. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, Matthew, thank you for, I kind of condensed it into one sentence there. And soon I want to hear from more of you. So let us know, how's this going? What's coming up for you? Eleanor Joy writes, I'm appreciating these perspectives. They're not part of my experiences. So thank you. And thanks for being real. Thank you, Eleanor Joy. Camila, how's it been for you managing other people's judgments, at the very least their discomfort?
Yeah, I'll start by saying all the bits that Blake, Brianna, and Trish said have all been true for me in different conversations and different instances. So yes, and what I'll add is from my own family life, when I was young, we were non-religious in my family, and there was a lot of openness around being queer because I grew up in Asheville, North Carolina, and there's an LGBT community there, and my mom was part of a women's singing group, and a lot of the women in that group were lesbians. So it was like pretty normal for me to see lesbians. And later my family became Muslim and I became Muslim. And then there was this whole religious overlay that had a whole lot to say about homosexuality and all the things that you hear in Judaism and Christianity and Islam. And then it became challenging in my young adult life with my parents to find that same acceptance and love that I had experienced when I was younger. And I know it was equally hard for them, my parents. And it took me time to really get that second part, how hard it was for my parents. And, you know, here they are learning religious beliefs that say their daughter's going to go to hell if, and they believe that wholeheartedly. And then what do with this daughter they absolutely love? We've been a close family with a lot of honesty and a lot of transparency. I was engaged to a woman in my late 20s, and I remember a really poignant conversation I had with my mom where she pulled me aside and she said, she put her arm around me and she was very serious. And she said, honey, I want you to know that your dad and I have talked. And if you and your fiance decide to get married, we will come to the wedding. And I was like, I get that I'm supposed to be happy because the answer is you'll come to my wedding, but I am heartbroken that it was even a consideration whether to come to my wedding. You know, we've come a long way since then. They're still practicing Muslim and they really love and accept me. And they get that this isn't a phase like Brianna's mom thought that I'll grow out of, you know, it's here to stay. So, you know, do you want to accept me or not? Right. And honestly, how I handle these conversations is similar to what Trish was saying at the end, which is there's so many things that are weird about me that I could be talking about Islam in a certain conversation, making people really uncomfortable. So it's not just queer that or kinky or poly. There's so many identities added to that list that would make certain people uncomfortable if I were to talk about them in certain environments. So to me, it's not exclusive to this topic. It's what Trish was saying, which is being aware of our audience. And for me, it's like there's an amount that I'm willing to say not speak loudly up to a point. And if I'm compromising myself, my identity, my truth, that's the point that I won't go past. I'll speak up. So there is sort of a balancing act for me. I don't need to shout from the rooftops that I'm this and I'm that, and you got a problem with that, too bad. That's not my style. So, but I'm also not going to shut up and not say who I am and what I am for fear of somebody's discomfort. So there's a middle ground, and I'm always tuning into that and doing my best to read that.
Beautiful.
Yay for calibration.
Calibration.
Attunement. Oh, so sexy. Calibration
Yes.
and attunement. Oh.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to ask another hard question. You know, in the title of our show, we said weird, queer, sexy, and beautiful. And claiming our beauty, really being able to see ourselves as beautiful, is a life's journey. And so I'm curious, and this is, I'm wanting really just sort of your own personal experience of embracing or working with seeing yourself as beautiful. And how does your sexuality, whether or not it's poly or queer, tie into that? Your own journey of really being able to look in the mirror and see yourself as beautiful.
For me, a big part of it has been playing in these spaces of the ugliness, like being able to really sink in and actually feel like, what if I can also see myself as disgusting? Like, can I actually let myself be in this total shadow? And the reason that I'm bringing it to this, we're having Dark Week. Also because I was reading the themes in Love Coach Academy. I was reading the themes of like really being in the darkness around this. And so a big part of this is being able to be in the shadows as well. And I express very light. Like, I think a lot of people meet me and they're like, oh yeah, she's like light and love. She's like pure walking light and love all the time. And a big reason that I can do this is because I have allowed myself to sit in the spaces and really acknowledge, like, wow, where am I judging myself like crazy? And can I sit in that long enough to be able to actually tap into the love that is underneath that and how incredibly beautiful it is? And I would say that at this point in my life, finally, I'm like, damn, you're amazing. Like, yes, awesome, hot, sexy, beautiful, yes. And there's still moments where I still will start to go in the spiral, but it was so important for me to look at the places where I was really not accepting of myself fully and roll around in that shit for a while.
Or roll around in it as a practice every now and again.
Every now and again.
Your question, Scott, made me think of several different layers of finding yourself beautiful, right? Like being able to look at an image of yourself or look at yourself in the mirror or receive compliments about your physical aesthetic appearance and believe them is one layer of believing you're beautiful that certainly took a little while for it to set in for me. But what's taken a lot more work is really accepting that I'm a beautiful person down to the soul level. regardless of who I choose to love, how I choose to love, the mistakes that I make, the shameful things that I do, the ways in which I don't show up in beauty, the ways in which I show up as a godforsaken mess who is disappointing people or hurting people's feelings or way out of integrity. It's being able to hold yourself in beauty at those times that I think is much harder, and has taken a lot more work. And the connection, I think, with sexuality and with queerness is that as a result of being on this path of weird, like just feeling all of these weird parts of myself coming through that are happening at the identity level, that I ultimately had to kind of wade through them all, both like claim them and then let go of them. Because to become overly attached to identity pieces is to restrict what you are and to label yourself into some narrow description that other people find digestible, that doesn't do justice to the complexity of who and what you are. And so for me, like it really was more true with poly first than it was with being queer, but both. Those recognitions of my truth, like admitting and coming to terms with that's how I am, was itself a spiritual path, because it forced me to confront all of my programming and all the judgments and all the places and reasons that people might reject me, and indeed reasons that I might reject myself. The programming for which goes back to, pre-verbal times. And I had to look at and touch and heal and love all of those wounded places in order to really come to a place where I find and accept myself as beautiful all the way to the bottom. And it's still a work in progress, like literally this week, I've been working really fucking hard on that. So this is coming off fresh as an expression of like what I really heard in your question, that to really appreciate and cherish oneself and celebrate oneself as a beautiful, attractive, lovable, choosable person.
And this is really the idea of conscious kink.
Yeah.
Right. So like, as we weave this part about poly, we've talked about queer and poly quite a bit here. And this is actually the idea of conscious kink, is that we're intentionally going to these places and kinking them out, finding a place to love them, seeing what healing there is involved in all of this.
Yeah. And getting dark with some of those places that of self-hatred or lack of acceptance or ugliness or messiness or judgment, and just being like, yeah, fuck it, that is me too. And how can you love that? And it can be very kinky. very,
As
very kinky.
Tat Bam Asi, I am that too.
I just wanted to riff a smidge about what, and I'm certain that I probably go rant about this when I get to talk next in the video. But there is a bit. So as I've been doing, I've already started working on my dissertation, which is years and years and years away. But one of the things that I've been noticing in my research is that one can trace individual insecurities through social norms. So if you historically look at what is socially acceptable, well, and I'm sure I probably even like talk about gender and our the beauty standard in this video. But when you start to really look at, we'll call it the beauty standard, you start to what we're constantly judging ourselves against, we start to see that that's also a social construct to fit into the norm. Again, our strategies for belonging can be really just tragic. And there's some of us who try to conform so much to get the privilege and the power to have that. And some of us just can't conform. It's just not available. Like if I was born a thicker Black woman, that would have been a really difficult place for me, because I can't conform to the very thin, young, white-bodied person. And as you queer your identity, that's one of the things that you look at. You start to step out of what is considered beautiful, what is considered desirable, and you start looking at your own desires, you start looking at your own sexuality, you start looking at your own identity, and you've got to look at it and find ways outside of the social construct to really love yourself. Can I love myself in the gross, nasty places as well as the places where I just don't fit in? I mean, and I have that beauty standard privilege. So there's places where I still struggle with that, even though, because I still don't quite fit into the exact norm, or the places of intellect or class or you name it. And so I've been tracing insecurities base all the way back to this, where the social norm started. So the social norm is conformity, right? For safety. So we get something if we're participating in that. And rant. Okay.
Onward.
I missed that. Did you? I didn't
Say
hear
it
you.
again.
Oh, maybe Tatavam Asi, I am that too.
Mm.
The
I am that
understanding
too.
of Tantra being the integration of all the parts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Trish, Camila, do you want to share kind of your journey as I asked?
You want to go first?
Sure. So I had parents that gave me a good imprint for self-love. So I don't feel like I had a major conflict of, I'm not beautiful because I'm poly or kinky or queer, or any of these identities. I would say where it was most challenging for me was when religion entered the scene. And I know a lot of people have that story. So for me, it was, when my family became Muslim, when I was a teenager and I started practicing Islam at the same time, then it was like, does God accept me? So it was less my self-love and more this idea of this external entity that was in control, and was I going to be loved by that? And that was really challenging for me for many of the years of my 20s. I had a really hard time feeling like I was making a good choice from a spiritual lens to be living in queer relationships. And that wasn't reconciled for me until late 20s, early 30s, late 20s, when I started, getting to the place of it's not about God, heaven, hell, good, bad, straight, queer, all the dichotomies that we're taught in religion. And I was able to really see a much deeper truth of universal humanity, and we're all loved by God. We're all accepted, we're all cherished, and that was the harder part of my journey, was around religion.
How are you doing in present time with seeing yourself as beautiful? Do you find yourself seeing yourself more and more beautiful as time goes by? Or as often as we age, that brings up challenges. So how in present time is your journey of seeing your beauty going?
Yeah, I would say that I've been deepening. Thanks, Blake. Blake just gave me a "you're hot" message. I would say that I have been intentionally deepening self-love in the last couple of years. There was a lot of internal growth work that I did during COVID. That's pretty much how I spent my lockdown, was getting extra healing sessions and coaching sessions and really working on some deep parts. I was working on this whole codependency theme that I've had in adult relationships of my own. So digging deep into the roots of codependency brought me into where I felt disconnected as an infant. And then from that place, I was deepening my self-love. So yes, it's a practice that's very present for me. And just recently I was working on deepening that a lot. I don't feel challenges around I'm not beautiful because I'm aging. That just hasn't been a part of my experience, I could say, yet, or maybe it won't ever be. I'm approaching 40. I feel great. I do feel better and better, better and better, because I'm on that life path of spirituality and growth and self-acceptance and love and community and support and all the things. So I would say it's more and more and more self-love over time.
Beautiful. Well, speaking of self-love, Trish has this show that she does every week, and it's not called Straight Talk.
Oh yeah, you want me to talk about the self-love show?
Hint,
hint.
Hint, hint. Well, I'm trying to help you promote there, dear. And also, there's the
Oh.
same question: how you dealing with beauty,
Yeah.
the concept of beauty?
I'll weave it in. So, okay, I'll answer the question first, and then I'll weave the whole other thing in. I've been really chipping away at social constructs, if you guys haven't noticed, but I feel like beauty, social beauty standards, are also part of this system of degradation that has been cultivated for hundreds and hundreds of years. It is why white people are more quote unquote attractive. Like, it is part of this systems of oppression piece, to dissolve the empowerment of feeling into one's embodiment and into one's truth. So as I dissolve the really annoying beauty standards of like femininity or masculinity or like, you know, makeup or whatever, like lingerie or whatever that looks like, the more I recognize that beauty is a feeling. It's a heat, it's a fire, it's like part of inspiration, part of arousal of the senses of the spirit, for me specifically, that I see beauty in people's authenticity, in their truth, in their vulnerability, in their darkness, in their just truth, like in them being them. And, you know, as I sit with all of these pieces and I start to see that every human is just kind of a messy mess, I'm like, ugh, can I love you there? Like, can I love you in the deep, dark, like, least attractive piece of you? And you know, that's one of the things that I participate in my partnerships is when they're, I call it, okay, so when I'm a mess or when someone's a mess, I call it being an amoeba, you know? Like when they're all like just not contained in yeah, exactly, like when they're just like a mess, and I'm like, I can love you there. And that's the place of working towards self-love, is that can I love myself in the places that I judge, and the places that I judge are really just values that I hold. And you know, humans are, I'm going to say it, inefficient machines. That just because I'm aware of something doesn't necessarily mean that I can change it as fast as my awareness can see it. How annoying. Oh, so anyway, can I love me in the personal growth? Can I love me in that place? And that's why Dawn Light and I developed this show called the Self-Love Show, which is, there's multiple reasons for it. One, because you were very much an inspiration, Scott, after doing the mentorship and relationship essentials, and this place of like really wanting tools and the work being able to be like just really accessible for people. So the Self-Love Show is a free tool. Every week we have either I'll teach or Dawn will teach, or we'll have a guest on to teach some aspect of self-love. And self-love is also conflict with others. You know, how do I move through conflict with others, and how do I get back into integrity, or how do I deal with, you know, my own inherent racism? How do I deal with all these things and still find a way forward? And so those are pieces for me. So just to say, personal work, like doing my work, is part of self-love. Like it is like sitting in the discomfort and looking at it and choosing to love as an action. And love is the acceptance of what it is. That's how I love myself.
What's it like seeing Trish from a year ago, or whenever we did this, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago? How have you changed? How have you evolved?
There's some different distinctions that I have. around love, around my own gender. I'm a lot more comfortable with the word queer. Again, I still don't use it. I am hosting a queer event with Soul Play called Queer Connect in the Bay Area on the 14th of April, which, it's called, and I love this, is pronounce yourself. So like a play on pronouns. I love that. There's some places where I'm a lot more like, I'm actually kind of surprised at how wildly open I was like, wow, dang. I was just sharing like nobody, like whatever. I'm like, okay. A lot more of my work is, I'm still doing codependency and self-love work. Also a lot of the the Love Coach Academy work, but also really bringing in my understanding around sex coaching and kink, like my experiences in the kink community. That's all changing. So I'm launching my new program called Attuned Dominance, which is BDSM, dominance outside of the patriarchal white supremacy model. So that's, it's evolving. I'm evolving as a human.
Yeah.
I've started dating trans women and I've dated women. Like my expression has just changed drastically.
Well, it's an honor to watch you evolve and to be your friend. And you all can join Trish and myself and Mark Denisovsky and Omar Shar and Bonnie and Roger. And let's see who else is, and Nitya is going to be with us.
Awesome.
And let's see who else is here that's going to be part of our, turn on your cameras if you're going to be at the retreat. We are gathering in less than a week now in Los Angeles, and there are still spots available, and you could be with all of these beautiful people and many, many, many more who are going to be with us. And so wouldn't it be wonderful to be able to hug Trish and to be able to talk to Scott and talk to Mark and all the people that I just mentioned? So I really want to encourage people. This is happening. We're all going to be together. And I know it's a big deal to figure it out and come to LA, but we have a mansion where we're going to be doing the events that literally is a 10-minute drive, a 10-minute Uber from LAX. It's right on the other side of Los Angeles Airport. So you can fly into LAX. We will pick you up. We will ferry you about. We're going to have love coaching, psychics, healers, music, Larissa Stowe, and Omar Shar. So Omar Shar and Trish, what are you most excited about with the retreat?
I'm still digesting tonight because I've watched the evolution of both of you, because you were 65 then, and now you're 59, so it's brilliant.
And my hair's longer.
And it's longer, but it was amazing. What an evolution, and it's molded, for instance, Trish into even more of a whole being than she was already then, and of course coming to LA. It's just going to be so wonderful to be with each other, to actually be with each other and speak to each other and feel each other's breath and bodies and share with each other. Basically, it's just such a lovely thing. I've spent so long in front of a computer screen, loving it and loving the connection because it's expanded my world to the world. But to have this chance, this possibility, which is not going to be for another quite a while, I would not miss it for the world.
Beautiful. And how about you, Trish? What are you most excited about?
Oh, I get to meet all these people that I've only been seeing virtually for a zillion years. And the weather's better. I'm really excited. In the mansion, I was like, don't get me wrong, I had this fantasy for a hot second. I was like, we should get a photographer in there and have people take pictures of us because it's beautiful.
It is. It's a really beautiful place. And since the last time I've been on Awakening World, we've added, we're collaborating now in a big way with Tangela and Soul Search. And she's got all of her psychics coming because she's got a psychic fair on Sunday. But on Saturday, what we're going to do is we're going to be offering healings, love coaching, psychic sessions, It's going to be like just, get an astrology reading, get a coaching session, get a healing, get a massage. It's going to be really, really, really fun. So definitely join us. There's a couple of earlier events that are not Global Peace Tribe, but you can still come to on Tuesday, the 28th, the big LA Convergence with Unity Earth. Wednesday, the 29th, we're going out to Patra and Antoinette's land, doing a land blessing, and then doing a big event on the beach. And then our retreat starts on Thursday, the 30th. Connie and Andrew, Wowza, and Maureen are all going to be with us. It's going to be a really, really amazing week. So please still join us. Dia just wrote, this show is the single most meaningful and helpful of the hundreds of meaningful and helpful shows over the years. Maximum gratitude from Dia. Very cool. Thank you, Dia. We knew we were going to play a replay today, and this is the one we chose because I picked out 5. I gave them to Omashar. Omashar picked this one, which is perfect because I really wanted Trish to be happy. So thank you, Trish and Omashar, for starting the show off without me and doing such a wonderful job. It's great to know that, those guys can handle it. So thank you so much. And Trish has homework, so we're going to let Trish go to homework.
It's midterms.
Oh my gosh. We're going to turn it over to Omashar for a closing song. And get up and dance and move, everybody.
So thank you, Trish. Love you, sweetheart.
Please show me how to reach you. Strip me down, let go my mind. I was naked and blind. I'm finding it harder holding on to what's gone. And there's the future. What if we never get that far? I know it may sound crazy if I say not much is real. So tell me inside, how do you feel? This is the time to break the mold of the old and dysfunctional way we have lived our lives so far. How much longer can we hold on to that which tears us apart? So free up your mind, open your heart. No longer can we hold on to that which tears us apart. So free up your mind, open your heart. And finally free from self-disguise, I rise from the ashes of the me I used to know. You know that I am a dreamer, and I would like you to see that I am dreaming a new reality. you. Strip me down, let go my mind. I was naked and blind.
Woohoo! Thank you so much, beloved Omashar. I love that one. That's a great one.
Yeah, they're all great, Scott, but it's the context and the two songs that I chose for this show are just perfect because the theme dictates what comes in. So thank you for that recognition.
Absolutely. I can't wait to be with you next week.
I
It's
know.
about to happen.
Holy
It's
smoke.
Oh, but I will be with Omashar online this weekend, and I do want to tell people a little bit about what's happening this weekend. So, as most of you probably know by now, I'm in Sedona, and the Hollow movement is starting tomorrow night, and it's a working retreat with 75 members of the Evolutionary Leaders Network. And so we're going to have our Awakening World shows at the regular times, Saturday night at 6 o'clock Pacific time, Sunday morning at 10. And I'm going to have members of the Evolutionary Leaders spontaneously coming and joining me. And already several people have said yes. And of course, Reverend Deb Boldow and Ben Bowler and some people you do know. But we're also going to be meeting a lot of evolutionary leaders that you haven't met yet. So that's going to be a really fun and rather unique shows this weekend. And again, come join us in Los Angeles. Really hope you can make it. Kiki writes, that was a very educational show for me tonight. Learned some new words and the definitions. I don't get off the farm very much. Yeah, absolutely.
There's one comment, sorry, Scott, from Dia saying that she wants to know how people after the first two events can join with our event, I'm assuming from the question, just a couple of things back. And so, Dia, you can just go on to globalpeacetribe.com, correct? And click on the sign up and itinerary for our retreat.
Can somebody tell me how my friends participate in events after the 20th? Yeah. There's a link. I'll put it into the chat box again. And that's got all the information. You can also, if people are really interested, you can have them email me or text me. So I just put the link, and that has like all the different links. That takes you to a website with kind of different links to different parts, like our agenda and things like that. And I'm going to put my cell phone number in here. Please don't write it on any bathroom walls. But here's my text, and don't call, text me, because I don't even check my voicemail that often, but I'm religious about responding to text messages. So for anybody who wants information about the retreat, there are single day tickets now. So you can come for a single day, you can come for all 4 days, you can come for all 6 days, and we might even extend for another day. It's going to be really amazing. Psychics, healers, love coaches, Omashar, Larissa Stowe, music, and so much more, and hopefully you. So it's going to be, Nitya is going to be with us. I'm really excited about that. He's waving. So yeah, I get to meet people that I haven't met, but there he is. And of course, Bonnie and Roger, who found the mansion, Mark Danisovsky, who's going to play accordion for us, of course. And Connie and Eric. Who have I missed? Have I missed anybody? No. So anyway, join us. I'll see you this weekend on the Awakening World. Much love to each and every one of you, and have a beautiful evening, everybody. I'm going to go to a gallery view one last time, so you can all wave goodbye. Take care, everybody. We'll see you soon. Good night.